Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Tomcat Stitchery. I'm Whitney, and today we're talking about taking one dress pattern and turning it into three completely separate dresses. How we can do that. This is my stop on the Pattern Hackathon tour. So Chris from Unsocial, on Instagram, she also has a beautiful YouTube channel, is running this challenge this month on hacking patterns. She had a different prompt each week. This week's is size inclusive, and I'm using a very size inclusive pattern for this one, but basically getting us to get more out of our patterns, whether that be just to get more bang for our buck out of our patterns, or if it's more of a creativity thing and how can we think outside the box and do some really, really fun things. So for my stop on the tour, I have chosen the Cashmerette Upton dress, and I have added two different skirts that do not come included with the pattern, and showing you guys a tutorial on how to create both of them. It's very simple math. There is math involved, but it's simple math. Anyway, so I'm going to be walking you through that. I've also made this dress in three very different fabrics, so kind of talking you through that too. But if you are someone that is maybe not as comfortable with, if you're new to sewing, if you are new to sewing and you want some hand holding on how to even start sewing a dress like this, may I remind you that I do have an introduction to garment sewing class, and while we do use different patterns in that class for me to teach techniques, all of the techniques that are taught in that class you would easily be able to make in any three of these dresses. So just as a reminder, I do have that over there, and I'll leave a link to that in my description box, or you can just go to the website, tomcatstitchery.com/shop, I believe. We'll take you right there to the classes, or just go to the regular website, scroll up a little bit, and you can hit the button that takes you right there to those classes. Okay, so why did I choose the Cashmerette Upton? If you are someone that is maybe not as comfortable with hacking patterns, but you do want to get a lot of bang for your buck, these patterns are not inexpensive. You want to, you take the time to fit them to yourself, and you want to get a lot of use out of them. I highly recommend this pattern, especially the expansion pattern. So the original Upton from Cashmerette featured a darted bodice, a sleeveless darted bodice, lined, that you can either do a scoop neck or a V-neck on. And then it came with either a pleated skirt, such as this, or a gored skirt. So a little bit of fullness there, but it was a skirt. Should I say a paneled skirt? So not really a gored skirt. But yeah, because it wasn't, yeah. Anyway, well, no, maybe you would call it gored. Doesn't matter. I've seen lines that go down. So it gives it a little bit of fullness. So more than an A-line, but not as much as a circle skirt. But a little bit of fullness there. And again, there are those seam lines. And then a couple years later, they introduced the expansion pattern to that, which includes all the original pieces, and it has sleeveless princess seamed bodices, both the scoop neck or the V-neck, and a square neck. I believe a square neck was also, yes, I'm wearing it. This is the square neck. This is the scoop neck, the original scoop neck, original V-neck. This is the square neck that was added to the pattern. And this is darted too. Take a minute to think. Anyway, and then it has all three of those necklines in, princess seam or dart, and then sleeveless, or it has a different bodice if you want something with a sleeve. It also includes 7 different sleeve patterns, and then the same 2 skirts as the original pattern, but at different lengths. So you can do like an above the knee, if you want to call that mini, you can do a midi or a maxi. And the skirts can all be, of the dresses can all be worn as just standalone skirts. So they're separate waistband pieces if you want to just make it just a skirt. So much bang for your buck. I actually have a 20% off coupon for all of the regular catalog patterns on Cashmerette on my website, tomcatstitchery.com/resources. So if you'd like 20% off this pattern, I do have a code for that. And it's over there, right there on that resource page. So it's a great time to grab this. Again, the pattern is lined bodice. The skirt is not lined. I think it does include pockets, but I don't think I put pockets on any of these. And then it features a zipper in the back. Invisible zipper. I mean, you can put whatever zipper you want. This is the V back. It's got the low back, and then it also has the high back, of which, this one is the higher back, as is the one I'm wearing. I have to think about that. And like I mentioned, I've also made this in 3 separate fabrics. So let's talk a little bit about fabric, and then I will talk about the 3 dresses, the patterns, and the hacks that I've done. So this one here to my right is done in a cotton sateen and a little bit heavier weight. Like I could have made a pair of pants out of this weight of cotton sateen. Oh, I even used a Petersham ribbon to finish off the hem of this. This one I made a while ago. If you've been following the channel a while, you know that this dress has been in my wardrobe a little bit, and I can finally fit back into both of them. And my inflammation is down, and so I'm really loving wearing these dresses right now. But this is great if you want something with a little bit more structure, a little bit more wow, stands away from the body, that sort of thing. This dress that I've got with the pleats, the reason I chose this skirt on this is a looser woven, I think it is a cotton blend, but a very loosely woven. You can kind of see the checks. But the reason that I chose the pleated skirt on this is because this has a very linear line, that grid, for the large scale gingham. And I wanted to keep the hem completely straight. Hem is not straight on a circle skirt, but it is on this pleated skirt, or even on the gored skirt that comes with the pattern. So it allows me to keep that hem straight so that my lines all stay horizontal and vertical. So love this version as well. It's a little bit thinner fabric, so it doesn't, it's cotton, so it stands away from the body a little bit, but still holds its structure, but thinner so that it's not too cumbersome, and you still got a lot of twirlability in this skirt. And then finally, I made this version here with the tiered and gathered skirt with a viscose crepe. I almost said challis. It's not. This is a viscose crepe or a rayon crepe. And love this with the tiered and gathered skirt as well. Just really flowy. It's just the perfect summer dress. So highly recommend this pattern. This version that I have got on my body is the pattern as is. So if you were to buy the original Upton or the expansion, although if you're going to buy it, buy the expansion. Why wouldn't you? So many options that are there. But again, I guess this isn't, because this would be the expansion because of the square neckline. Anyway, it is the sleeveless bodice with the darted bodice. It does have the waistband seam here, although you can choose to make it with or without the waistband piece. I used the waistband piece on these two. I did not on this. So there are 2 options for doing that. And then I've just got the pleated skirt, the midi length pleated skirt onto this. So this is the original dress. But if you would like something different, even if that's not enough options for you on the Upton, I'm showing you 2 ways to hack a skirt to attach to this. Now, if you are a club member of Cashmerette, you actually, or All Access. If you're an All Access to your club member of Cashmerette, they do have a circle skirt pattern that was one of their very first ones with the club called the Gilmore. That can be worn as alone, as a skirt, or it also can be sewn to the Upton as a circle skirt. So if you have that option, fantastic. That is what this is. But if you don't have the club and you would like to put a circle skirt pattern on, or circle skirt onto the bodice of your Upton, I'm going to show you how to draft that now. Now, I do mention in the video, I couldn't remember how long my skirt was. I'm showing you an abbreviated length just because for as much overhead camera view that I had, you wouldn't have been able to see, everything wouldn't have been in frame if I did what this actually is. This is 26 inches. I couldn't remember when I was filming the tutorial, but this is 26 inches from waist to hem. So double what I'm going to show you in this video. So let me show you how to draft a circle skirt.
All right, so like I mentioned, Cashmerette does have a circle skirt pattern, the Gilmore, that is with their club that can be attached to the Upton. But if you don't have the club and you really would like a circle skirt put onto the bottom, I'm going to do a little demonstration on how to do a circle skirt pattern. It's very simple if you've never done it before. So I'm doing it in a small scale here though, because I just can't get far enough away from the camera. If I were doing the entire length of the skirt that you guys have seen, and I would have to tape multiple pieces of paper together, I can't easily film that. So I'm doing it on a smaller scale, what would be a very, very short mini skirt, but you're gonna get the idea and I'll walk you through it. So the first thing we need to do is we need to find out the radius of our circle skirt. Now, there are lots of or not lots, but there are some calculators that will give you this, and for like circle skirt calculators and stuff like that. But it's really simple math, guys. And I know that can be different for all people. But to find the radius of your circle, and your circle is your waist, or like I said, the bodice of my dress is 34 inches finished. That is the circumference of my bodice, so it doesn't have to necessarily be your waist measurement, just whatever you're wanting to attach this circle skirt to. So my bodice is 34 inches. Now your radius is going to be, and the radius, if you're looking at a circle, the radius is from the center of the circle straight out. It is that distance, okay? So that is the number we need to get to. So our radius is the circumference over 2 times pi, which again, don't get caught up in the pi and all that kind of stuff. We know our circumference, that is the bodice, waistline, or sometimes your waist measurement, depending on what you're making here. But it's gonna be, for our all intents and purposes, is gonna be the measurement of the waistline of our bodice. So radius is, in my case, it is 34 inches. 34 is the circumference of my bodice waistline, the length of that bodice waistline, over 2 times pi, which is 3.14. And then you come down here, so that's 34 over 6.28, which gives us 34 divided by 6.28 is 5.41. Now, 5.5 would be 5.5 inches. 5.37 would be 5 3/8 of an inch. Don't get too caught up in this. You could round up or round down. I'm going to round down because your circle waistband is cut on the bias and has a little bit of stretch, and so I'm not too worried about it being just a hair too small. So that means that my radius is going to be 5 3/8 inches. And again, that is the distance from the center of the skirt, from the very center of your body to the outside waistline. And we know what that number is, okay? So that is my radius, 5 3/8 of an inch. Let me know if that, I know that can get confusing, and there are circle skirt calculators out there. Or you can also just Google, if my circumference is whatever the waistline of your garment is, what is the radius? And it will also just give you that information if that's easier. All right, so now that's how I got that number. Again, you can make it as simple or as hard as you want. Now the next thing, you do want to make sure that your paper that you're going to be drafting this on has a perfect right angle here at the corner where you're going to be working from. Because a right angle, again, if we're looking at our circle, a right angle is going to give us a quarter of our skirt, okay? So you want to make sure that this is a 90-degree right angle if you're cutting your pieces off. All right, then it's very, very simple. We're going to mark 5 3/8, and that's going to be right there. And then I'm going to mark it on this side. And now we are just going from this tip 5 3/8 around the circle. So we are, for all intents and purposes, drafting 1/4 of your circle skirt. So think of it in terms of, if you're working on a bodice, you're working 1/4 of the entire bodice usually. So like the front, it's, you cut 2 of the front or cut it on the fold or whatever. Often with pattern making, you're working with just 1/4 of the pattern. So this is 1/4 of the pattern. And now I'm just going to connect those. Those are each 5 3/8 away from this 90-degree angle, okay? So the next thing you want to decide is, how long do you want your skirt? Now again, my skirt is quite a bit longer. I'm not sure, as I'm filming this, I'm not sure what that length is, but I should have told you in the video prior to this. Anyway, determine how long you want it. Again, I'm making this super short just so I can fit this on frame. But the next thing you're going to do is you're going to go however long you want your skirt. So we're going to make this skirt 13 inches long, which is not very long at all. This would be indecent. But I'm now going 13 inches from this line that we've created, which is our waistline, down to the hem. And I'm going to do it on that side as well. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go around following the curve of this waistline that I made and create the hem. Now, depending on your fabric width and, your waist measurement and stuff like that can make this, sometimes it doesn't fit easily onto the fabric, especially if you're trying to do like a midi or even like a maxi. So ways we can get around that. And for instance, if you were making the Gilmore skirt, it is in panels, not just one big circle with a seam down the back. And I'm just freehanding that. Okay, so here's 1/4 of our circle skirt. So again, 1/4. You can cut out 4 panels of this, sew them together to get your circle skirt. You will need to add seam allowances. So don't forget, there's no seam allowances on either of these sides. So you will need to add seam allowances if you are going to cut this into 4s. Or depending on your length, you may be able to cut one side out on the fold. And then, so you've got a front skirt and a back skirt. Again, it depends on the length of your skirt. If that's the case, then you will not add a seam allowance on this side, for instance, but you would add one on this side. So wherever you're going to attach those, just know that this needs to be ×4. So whether you're cutting it out on the fold or cutting 4 separate panels of this, you will need to have 4 of these, and you may need to add seam allowances if you are not cutting it. Or you will need to add seam allowances on the pieces that you're not cutting on the fold. Okay? So that is how you draft a circle skirt, and it, however many panels you would like to make it. Again, we have just drafted 1/4 of that circle skirt, and then it will fit perfectly onto your bodice. So you can go ahead and attach that to your bodice once you've cut that out and sewn together the pieces you need to sew. And now you've got an Upton with a circle skirt. As always, let me know down below if you have any questions.
Okay, then once you have drafted that and determined if you can fit that on, if you need to cut 4 panels and add your seam allowances, or if you can cut 2 separate panels that are on the fold, however that works out for you, then you just sew it to your the bodice here with the waistband, and there you go. You have got the Upton bodice with a full circle skirt. All right, if you're wanting something a little bit, I know this feels a little bit more summery, very on trend right now. For this version, I'm going to show you how I drafted the skirt of a tiered and gathered. There are 3 tiers on this skirt, and each tier is gathered to the one above it. Now, I did walk you through that the tiers, I cut strips that are 8 inches in width. However, when I went to then cut the strips, I had just enough left to make the bottom tier longer. So while I do say that all my strips were 8 inches, as I was cutting those 8-inch strips, when I got to what I knew needed to be the width of the final tier, I realized I had enough that I could make this tier much deeper. So I've got 8 inches, 8 inches, and this is 15. So I was able to do that. So that's how I got to this length, just so we're all on the same page. But let me show you how I got the pieces to do this tiered and gathered skirt.
All right, so let's talk about how I hacked this tiered and gathered skirt onto this Upton bodice. So I've got math here, but don't be worried about the math. I will zoom in on it in just a second. All right, so for starters, I have got the bodice constructed. It was on a hanger, which is why I've got it clipped here. But the bodice is constructed, meaning I've got the lining and stuff in. The back is completely open because I won't put the zipper in until I've got the skirt attached there on the back. But my side seams and stuff are done. It's all understitched. Everything is all nice and pretty here on the bodice. And I have opted not to use the waistband piece. You absolutely could use the waistband piece. Totally up to you. I just didn't. This fabric is pretty busy in a large scale print. I didn't want to chop it up more with a waistband piece. But you could also put in a contrasting color for your waistband if you wanted to. Totally up to you. So that's as far as I've gotten on the dress. Now it is time to connect the tiers. And I'm going to be gathering these tiers starting at one back piece and then gathering it to the other side of the back piece, keeping this back open, because once we've got all the tiers gathered, we'll have a completely open back. Then we can go back and sew that center back seam and pop that zipper in per the pattern's instructions. So that is what we've got for the bodice. Okay, how did I come up with my tiers? All right. Let's have a little math lesson. All right, so the waist of my dress, the finished waist, I measured it. I actually measured the actual pattern pieces, but you could make up your bodice and then measure if you wanted to, completely up to you. But the size that I made my finished waist is 34 inches. So that is excluding all, the dart bulk and the seam allowances and all that kind of stuff. So I made up the bodice and then I measured what that waist was, 34 inches. So I would like my tiers to be 2 to 1, meaning I want each gathered tier to be twice the length as the layer that it's being gathered into above it. So, which is just my preference. You could do whatever, if you wanted to do 1.5, whatever ratio you like for gathers, but I really like a 1 to 2 ratio. You can even go a 3 to 1, up to you. Anyway, so the way that I got the length of tiers that I needed is I just doubled it. So if I want a 2 to 1 ratio, that means I needed to take this 34 inches and I doubled it and got my 68 for tier 1. So I need a length of fabric that is 68 inches long for tier 1. And then for tier 2, I need a length of fabric that's 136 inches in order for it to sew into tier 1. And then tier 3, I need a length of fabric that is 272, or width of fabric that's 272 inches long, because that's twice of what tier 2 is. So those are the lengths of strips of fabric that I need for each tier. So when I add all those up to see exactly what I need, I come up with 476 inches that I need of total fabric scraps. My fabric is 54 inches wide. So if I divide that by 54, which is the width of my fabric, so that will depend on what the width of your fabric is, I get 8.8. So I need 8.8 strips of fabric in order to gather into this. Obviously, we're going to round up, which would make sense to round up to 9. But I have found I like to go over it, mostly because my preference in gathering is using my serger and the gathering foot or the ruffling foot on my serger. But if you're doing this by hand, gathering it the regular way, you really don't, 9 would be plenty. But because sometimes my machine gathers up a little faster than the 2 to 1, just it depends on the weight of the fabric, I round it up to 10 so that I can make sure that I've got enough as my machine does that. So completely up to you. So if you were doing it by hand, I would just do the 9, and then you'll just either gather that extra in that bottom tier, or you could trim it off, up to you. Or you could cut your strips and then cut exactly 68 inches, and then 136 inches, and then 272 inches. Again, completely up to you how you would like to do that. So I have cut 10 strips, and hopefully that makes sense. 10 strips, and I have made each of my tiers 8 inches long. But again, depending on your height, how much fabric you have, this was completely dictated by how much fabric I had. So mine are each 8 inches deep, but I've got 10 strips here. So now we are ready to sew these into the strips that we are going to be using for our tiers. So again, you can just sew up your strips. I like to just go ahead and sew up all the strips together. So I've made one really long continuous length, and then you could go back and cut, your 68-inch piece, your 136-inch piece, or your 272-inch piece. I actually just keep, because I do mine with the ruffling foot on the serger, I just keep it one long piece, and then I just trim it when I get to the end, and then I start over so that I'm not wasting anything. But it completely, if you're doing it by hand, which I'm assuming most people will be doing, you could go ahead and cut your strips into those lengths, and then it's just a matter of gathering each of those pieces onto the piece on top. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions down below. But a very simple way to do the tiered and gathered skirt on the Upton bodice. Also a really fun way if you wanted to put like little inserts of lace in between your tiers, could be really, really cool. And if I were doing that, I start at the top and work my way down. I would go ahead and gather, well, I would maybe sew my piece of lace onto my bodice and then gather my tier 1 onto that piece of lace. And then I would sew flat a piece of lace onto the bottom of tier 1 and then gather tier 2 to that and on down the bottom of the skirt. That can be really cool, or you could pop piping in there if you wanted to, or like what I'm gonna do, just leave it as is and just gather the next bottom tier up into the top one. All right, let me know if you have any questions on this one.
There you have it. Easy peasy. Sewed the tiers to the bodice and then sewed up that center back seam to pop in that zipper. Everything looks fantastic. Again, I did omit the waistband piece here, mostly because this is such a large scale print. I didn't want to break up more of the print with that waistband piece, but completely up to you if you want to use that or not. So there we have it. My 3 dresses, 1 dress, 3 ways with 2 skirts that you can hack very easily for any fitted bodice that you might love, that fits you really, really well. Or for specifically this video, the cashmere at Upton. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I'll see you guys next time, but until then, happy sewing.